Welcome back, guys, to the Futbal Biz podcast. As always, I'm Graysen Mortimer. He is a sad rugby fan, and Evan McGuire, and we are back. It's been a few weeks. Both of us have been quite busy, myself especially. I've been kind of
Mhm.
nonstop, so we're able to fit an episode in today. So here we are. And before we get going, we do just want to touch base on the unfortunate tragedy that did happen in Belgium. Two Sweden fans were killed in a shooting prior to the game. It unfortunately was postponed. To those people and their families, uh, big, big condolences from me, and it's something you never want to see. And likewise, the current conflict happening in Israel and Palestine. My thoughts to all those families there as well. Um, it's something that you never want to see, and football aside, it's a major tragedy.
Uh, yeah, I mean, that's just insane of like how far that we can go with the hooliganism. There's just really no need for that. It's really at the end of the day, I it's just a game, but like it's really not worth something just losing your life over, it's just at the end of the day, entertainment, something that's just that we all, want to just seemingly enjoy. Like, sure, like we may endure, frustrational loss. Trust me, I had to endure one of the worst losses I could have ever imagined. Although, be it wasn't soccer, but still, I did shed a lot of tears, let me just say. But yeah, again, at the end of the day, it's just like life goes on, It's not worth, taking somebody's life over.
Yeah,
Really
e-
sad.
exactly. And it is unfortunate, and again, to those Swedish people, and their families, we express our condolences there. Yeah, moving on from that dour note, unfortunately, things happen in the world that are greater than football, and this is one of those instances. But yeah, moving from that, there has been a big retirement announcement, one that I think a lot of people were kind of expecting, which is Eden Hazard did retire. He can now enjoy Burger King anytime he wants to. Um, but I do think that his retirement was pretty expected. He seemed to kind of just his career kind of came to a standstill when he went to Real Madrid. That's where it all went
Yeah.
wrong there. I mean, he just did not pan out at that team at all. He was not the best at training, apparently. Seemed a bit lazy, dealt with injury problems. But let's not forget how good he was at Chelsea. I mean,
Oh yeah.
Chelsea right now, especially, would like pay millions, literally, to have Prime Hazard back. He
I
would
would.
be easily their best player. Again, he's one of the best players that the Prem has ever seen. And yeah, he's one that influenced an entire generation, and he was obviously in that Belgian generation as well. And to Eden Hazard, have a great career. Don't go to BK too much, man. Keep yourself in shape.
I mean, yeah, you really just touched upon everything that I was gonna say, and Chelsea legend always, they will always look back on, the great memories that they had when they were good, and think of him, just sheer class, one of the best there really is, all apart from like the whole Salah Hazard debate. He's just one of the best players that we've seen of this current generation. The
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And obviously Hazard Salah. I mean, that's a debate I didn't even know a ton about, but my opinion, Prime
Mhm.
Hazard was probably the more skilled of the two, but Salah's the better goal scorer. Um, I think there's more to be said there, but we don't have to get into that right now. I think
Ah,
that
yeah, sure. Like I don't even want to get into that.
I
Like,
think I think the records for
it's
both of them speak for themselves, and it's one
ah,
that
exactly that's
uh
not even like the whole point. I just wanted to say, just he was just that good to, make himself into
oh
a
for
debate
sure.
like that. Like
Yeah.
again, like I just said, it's the way his career had to end, but we have to look back at like the prime points. He was unreal.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, I think Hazard was one of the best players in the 2010s, no doubt. Um but yeah, moving on from that to a couple of results from the last few weeks. We're not going to touch too much upon the past. Obviously it's been a few weeks since we've done an episode, but really, I think each of us are just going to cover our own clubs at this point.
Yeah,
Man City did play a couple games over the last few weeks, and frankly, they were shocking. It was
yeah,
really bad. We lost to Wolves, who we absolutely should have beat. Um, and then I can't remember who the other team we lost to was, but we lost both games. It was not good at all, and
yeah. He lost
it,
to
it,
Wolves and he lost to Arsenal.
it was Arsenal. That's right. Yeah, like
Yeah.
late Martinelli winner off of a deflection.
Yep.
It was bad. I mean, it kind of exemplifies how important Rodri is to the team. I mean, they are not the same team without him, plain and
No.
simple. I mean, he is the glue that holds the team together. And I've said that in the past too. I'm like, I get Rodri isn't our necessarily best player, but he is the most important because without him, the team just doesn't seem to function. Calvin Phillips was terrible. I'm surprised he was playing for England today. I mean,
Yeah.
he's been that bad. I mean, does England not have a better defensive mid? Just play Declan Rice there. Honestly, I don't get it. But yeah, I mean, City looked bad, especially the Wolves game. I mean, losing to Arsenal's one thing. Arsenal's a good team. They're a legit
Mhm.
contender. They're probably going to get top four.
Yeah, they
Um,
will.
but Wolves, oh dear God, no,
Yeah.
no, that loss is unacceptable. It just you can't lose that match. Um, to a team that can't score, you let the guy that Pep insulted score on you, and then you couldn't add a response. Holland especially was shocking that game. I mean, he was
Yeah,
missing
he's
chance after chance after chance, like goals that he scores, like easy tap-ins. They were not tough chances, and he just
mm,
couldn't put them away. And I don't know what it is with him, but he's seemed off recently, and I get he still has 8 goals this season so far, which is insane, but he seemed off. And hopefully he's able to kind of get his confidence back. It won't be with Norway because they've been bad too. But yeah, I mean Holland's gonna start to step it up a little bit more.
I will say, yeah, when it comes to Haaland, he's a pure striker. I mean, he really depends on those assists, especially from De Bruyne. I feel like De Bruyne's come back, whenever that is, he should see, a rise back up in his productivity. But yeah, no, really, until then, it seems like Alvarez is more of the key man that gets the goals for City.
Yeah, Alvarez has been, I would say, in De Bruyne's absence, City's best player. I mean, he's been phenomenal.
Yes.
He's had some great link up play. Him and Foden, I would say, Foden's been great too. But they've had some good link up play. Alvarez has been scoring goals. Alvarez has been the assist guy. Like they've done everything through him, and he's been absolutely phenomenal for them. It's a shame that City just can't seem to get it going without Rodri. And hopefully, when he comes back, I mean, we saw how they did against Leipzig. I mean, they won that game comfortably. Rodri was in the team.
Hmm.
Holland looked bad in that game too, but they were able to get it done through other means and other channels. Foden scored a goal in that game, but yeah, I mean, we'll see how City does when we get back from the international break. But I do think that their performances will improve with Rodri, but it's kind of dire to think about if he goes down with an injury, how is the rest of the season going to fare? I don't think they win the league if Rodri gets an injury. I'm going to be straight up honest. I think either
Hmm.
Liverpool or Tottenham, if they don't pull a Spurs, of course, but there's a possibility that a different team wins the league this season if Rodri, gets injured again or suspended.
Yeah, no, you're right. Well, the league is looking really wide open right now with the current lay of the land. We have North London at the top right now. They're both still undefeated, although be it we can get into that later. Spurs on a technicality that they are still undefeated, but nonetheless, they are still top of the league, and Arsenal is trailing right behind them. And then not to say, well, Liverpool still has their injuries kind of now, with Robbo being questionable. So we'll see how that goes. But obviously, then we still have Brighton still in the mix too.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we can talk about Liverpool now. Obviously, the big game that happened with them was against Tottenham. Tottenham won on a 96-minute winner off of a deflection from Joel Matip, which went into the top corner off of a Pedro Porro cross. Controversial decisions in this game, especially I would say the big one is that Luis Diaz was called offside
Yep.
by VAR when he was clearly on. I mean, We can talk about the
Oh,
red
Gasco
cards in
there.
a second, but I think the obvious decision where VAR absolutely messed up was that goal. That should have counted. That absolutely should have counted. I mean, he was well
Honestly.
onside, clear breakaway, good goal. Um, Unfortunately, that was called back, but um, in the end of the day, the unfortunate things do happen.
Yeah, no, this is just again unacceptable from the league. We're meant to be supposedly the best league in the world, and yet we can't even have our officiating and referees make the proper decisions that are necessary for these big games. Again, it's that you can go into like the details about like how they were picked and all that, just getting off the flight from Dubai and all that. I really don't understand what the FA and the Premier League board are doing, making all these decisions with these referees, but it's got to stop at some point. Like just issuing apologies to these teams is not acceptable because at the end of the day, you're still costing them points and you're still also costing them potential revenue depending on how that rest of the season goes and the outcome where their placements are. So with that being said, they need to do better. And then we can
Oh,
also talk about now with the red cards because again, they were also questionable in themselves too.
yeah, for sure. And I think we can talk about the Jota one first and then go into Jones's a little bit. Jota, the first yellow card was a little bit questionable, um, as we
Horrible.
as we talked about. But that being said, it was a yellow card. You kind of just got to move on from that, even if it was an iffy yellow. He did a dumb foul right after that. I mean, whether
Did?
or not the first yellow was legit or not, you can't commit that foul. I
Not
mean,
legit.
and despite that, I mean, while the first yellow might have been questionable, second one, I mean, you're on a yellow card. It's a pretty clear cut. You're stopping an opportunity just to have a counter attack. That's a yellow every day of the week. It's a red card.
Yeah, well, again, first yellow, like you said, it was stupid, really stupid. Didn't even touch him. He pretty much tripped himself. Again, if we're giving out yellows for that, then it pretty much both teams would have been sent off because everybody's gonna dive and everything and call for that. Even then, I forget his name. He was also complaining that Jota should have been booked. So if anything, he should have been booked too and possibly been sent off because the rule is that you can't argue to a ref to tell someone to be booked. So that's all very questionable call as well. Some
Yeah, I did
serious
see that.
bias I feel like that's going on.
Yeah, I have seen
Not to
players
be
sent off for
salty
that
or
before.
anything, but
No, no, no, for sure.
like again, how's yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
like
And
how are you not gonna book him for that again?
yeah, exactly. And I mean, I've seen players sent off for that before. Where they talk their way into getting a yellow card or getting themselves sent off. I have seen that happen, but in the end of the day, he did commit the foul. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, there was definitely a bit of controversy there. And then obviously Jones, we had a long standing argument about that red
We
card.
did,
Um,
we did.
and the way I look at it is it's one of those orange type of scenarios where I can see it going either way. Now, what happened with this is Jones, his foot did go over the ball, but at the same time, with the challenge, a lot of the time when it is that physical challenge where you go over the ball and into the other player, I have seen players sent off for that before. You know, was it at least a yellow? Absolutely. I mean, there's no question about that. He went into the other player. It's one of those ones where for me it's a fine margin where it can be a red card. And in this instance, because of the positioning of where his foot was, it was high up on his shin. My opinion, it's a red. Um, and if it was a yellow, I would say, okay, he can't commit another foul, but they did decide to overturn it. It, it's again, one of those ones where it's kind of like an orange. It's in the middle. It can go either way. I felt personally it was a red card because of where his studs were, and where the challenge ended up. Do I think it was the most egregious foul in the world? No. There's been more obvious reds out there. Nacho Fernandez of Madrid, his
Guardiola.
red card, yeah, his red card that he had a few weeks ago, way more obvious. It was a two-legged lunging slide challenge. Didn't even get the ball, went straight into the player. That's a red every day of the week, and potentially a longer suspension. Or
All
Rodri,
right.
for example, choked the other player. Clear red. This one,
Well.
I felt it was a red.
Let me add. Let me get my input. If it would have been a yellow, I would have been understandable with that. There obviously is some kind of risk there, but at the same time, to give a red for just like him just slipping and just maybe catching him slightly on his shin guard, that gives the possible risk of just being able to give straight reds to every single player where they go in for a 50-50 tackle. Like it's a semi-contact sport. You risk that every single time you step out onto the field. But to say that that is a red card is just extremely unfair, especially when we have the amount of inconsistency right now with the refereeing in the Premier League. Specifically, also speaking with what happened the next week after in the Arsenal versus City game, where Guardiola committed two obvious fouls and he did not get booked for that whatsoever. So with that being added, how can we now, rule what is a possible obvious red card violation and send players off? Because again, the inconsistency is through the roof. Like obviously when you're going to slow down the VAR video, it's obviously going to look like it's a red card. But again, you should not be slowing it down. When you look in real time, you can just see, oh, he just slightly clips him. But again, they didn't do that. They slowed it down and just pinpointed one picture where he has his foot out just slightly on his shin. Like you can't be doing that. I'm sorry. It's a yellow at most. And there
Yeah,
is
I
my
mean, I
just
didn't
my
see
two
the
cents.
I unfortunately didn't see the Vardiol challenges, but I will say that City has had I mean, they've had their fair share of favorable calls over the year. The one that sticks out for me is the Rodri handball against Everton. Um, that one should have it was a clear cut, should have been a penalty. I mean, and that ended up costing, Liverpool a title directly. I mean, you're relying on Everton, which not a great scenario to begin with, but um, yeah, that should have been called, and that should have been a penalty, and those things do happen, and that's kind of to your point where yeah, there needs to be more consistency. Again, I believe that the Jones call was a red, but at the same time, if Josco doesn't get sent off, that's a problem too. Um, and it's one of those ones where I think I'm a big believer. I think if the studs go up at all, if it hits the ankle, that's usually a yellow. But anytime it goes higher, even if it is, a 50-50, those tend to be in that gray area for me. Um, and I've seen that, happen a lot, not just in the Prem, but I've seen it in the league, I've seen it in the Bundesliga and MLS. Um, where those kind of challenges, the 50-50s when they go in, but the studs collide with another player, a lot of the time it is a red card. Um, so I feel the way I do just because of the history that I've seen with these types of calls. And with that, personally, I think it is a red, but at the same time, to your point, um, yeah, there's got to be more consistency with those calls. I think if you punish Jones, which they did, you got to punish other players with those types of challenges. Um, and I don't think we're going to see that, but that's kind of where it's at right now.
Well, like I said before, this is meant to be the best football league in the world, and yet we still have questionable calls week in and week out. When is this going to stop? And just take accountability and be able to give proper fair action to these teams. Because, like I said before, yeah, sure, it may cost points, but also when you go down to the end of the season, you're also costing teams a fair lump sum of money. And then it also can cause a ripple effect to other teams who are at the very more bottom. They could get relegated off a technicality, and that could
Yeah.
cost them everything as well if they go down, because some of these teams may not ever recover. And then it also affects the players themselves, just the communities too. Like it has a ripple effect. Like I'm not even
Yeah.
salty just from myself too. This could happen to a lot of likes with Wolves. We can go on to about how Onana should have conceded a
Yeah.
penalty,
Absolutely.
and that would have cost them points because Wolves are still possibly in a relegation battle. Although, be it, do I still think that they can survive? Absolutely, they can still survive. But at the
Yeah, they
same
did beat
time, if
City.
it comes back and they could possibly be finding themselves in a relegation zone.
Yeah.
they could get relegated, and that could just cost them everything.
Yeah.
Again,
No, I agree.
it is not fair for all these teams, just to like have to take these apologies. It's not okay. There's way too much protection for these referees. And I can go into further detail back from like, previous season with the whole thing with Robertson and the one sideline official. He gets protected all the time, but yet Robbo did, take the full lit as well. And then even let's say going back to this season as well with the whole Van Dyke thing and the audio with what he said to the referee. That got released instantaneously. But yet it took what was it, 3 or 4 days for the audio with the whole VAR mistake with Diaz to be released? That's incredibly questionable. And even
Yeah.
then, from looking at that video, it seemed like it was somewhat edited too, because the kickoff of the game did not happen that fast from what I can remember in real time. It did not. So there is some very questionable things to be said with this league.
Yeah, for sure. And I do think that the conversation was embarrassing. I mean, all of those refs should be sacked on the spot. It was a bad game. And I do think that there just need to be adjustments, and I think we can leave it at that. I think the way it should work is, consult the VAR, look over the angles every time there's a goal. You should slow it down, draw the lines. That's the big thing for me. With that call, they didn't draw the freaking lines. You always have to draw the lines if it's a close call, and that's embarrassing. The fact that they didn't do that. I am not a referee, and I know to draw the lines whenever it's a close call, and it's that simple. They didn't do that. Those guys should all be sacked. It's a type of job where it's a high stakes thing. You're in charge of millions of dollars essentially, and depending on the game, potential billions as well. Uh, so I think it's embarrassing. Anytime you make a mistake like that, you should be suspended, and that's where I'm gonna end up standing with that.
Well, yeah, I agree with you too. And another thing that we didn't add is that Liverpool, they could, sue and, take legal action against the league. Because everybody wants to say, oh, it's Liverpool, they like to play victim and whatnot, yada yada yada. They're only trying to go for this treatment just because, it's Liverpool. But no, at the same time, they actually have the courage to stand up to the league. This is not an okay thing. And it's actually really good too that I am seeing some other rival fans kind of back us up on this. Like, I have seen, some United fans, including Mark Goldbridge, back us up on this. And it's a good thing. Like this should benefit every single team. It's not just because of us. It's everyone that is affected, like I said before in the past. Even the bottom teams. Some teams could get unfairly relegated because of this instances if
Yeah,
this were to happen again.
yeah, for sure. And I don't always agree with Goldbridge on some things, but I do think there is the occasional time where he just speaks facts, and the times
He
when he
does.
does, he's dead on. I mean, he's always
He's
dead
on
on
it.
with these types of things. Like, when he's able to get an opinion right, I mean, he just tends to be biased whenever United's playing, but
Well,
when it's
yeah.
a neutral match, I mean, he's a big fan of some Liverpool players. He
Yeah.
likes Salah. I mean, but
Yeah.
um, when it comes to those types of things, then yeah, you got to be, as impartial as you can be, and I try to do the same thing
Hmm.
when it comes to that, and yeah, uh, it's something that's got to change. I can say the same for MLS referees too. There's been a lot of mistakes in MLS games. My club's been robbed at least 3 times this season
Yeah.
off of the obstruction rule when it just clearly wasn't obstruction. Um,
Yeah. Well,
and
it's MLS,
it is MLS, but that's the
but
thing.
this is the
It's like it's
Premier League though as
referees
well.
elsewhere too.
Hmm.
Leagues
This is the
that
Premier
should be
League as well.
better because they can pay more. I mean, MLS isn't
Yeah.
broke; they have money. They can
No,
pay
they're
these
not.
refs. And it's the
Oh, they're
same thing with the
certainly.
prep. And
But
that's
this is
that's
the
kind of
Premier
where
League
it is. It's
too.
like we keep seeing these mistakes in leagues around the world, and it's unacceptable. But
Yeah.
I think that's
But
really all I need to say for that. I mean, if
yeah.
there's anything you got to add, otherwise, I think we can move on.
Yeah, we can pretty much move on now. All I will just say though with the whole MLS thing, You forget this is the Premier League. This is meant to be the
Yeah,
top league, like I keep saying. Like MLS is MLS. It's still trying to, grow and develop. So there will be some bumps on the way. Although be it like they still obviously shouldn't have some of these bumps. It should be a whole lot smoother. But like this is the Premier League. This is like the top league. There is like billions in this compared to the
yeah,
MLS. But yeah,
absolutely.
I will just leave it at that.
No, I could agree with that point. Yeah, but going from that to a couple international games that I want to talk about, I'll talk about the USA against Germany first, because I was at this game. It was kind of big stakes. Nagelsmann just took over the German team. He was obviously the coach of Bayern Munich. He was sacked after the end of the season or in the middle of the season. And then he was able to take over Germany. I think he's a great coach. And then this is one of the first matches that Greg Berhalter has been back for the US. Um, the USA looked really good in the beginning of the game. Christian Pulisic scores an absolute banger, absolute curler right around Marc-Andre Ter Stegen. Really nothing he can do about it. But then Germany claws their way back. İlkay Gündoğan scores a goal. Leroy Sané absolutely terrorized the USA back line. Gündoğan scores. It goes 1-1 into halftime, and then right after the break, Nicholas Füllkrug and Jamal Musiala score. Germany win the game 3-1. A lot of positives, takeaways for them, and a lot of negatives for the U.S. in the second half. They were absolutely outclassed. Um, but overall, good win for Germany, and I was fortunate enough to end up meeting about half of their players over the week.
Yeah, you did.
I was able to go meet some players. The best one, obviously, that I think for me was that I met İlkay Gündoğan. He was
Yeah, I was
a
gonna
very
say that.
nice dude. Signed my city jersey. I got a picture with him. Definitely going to get that framed at some point. And yeah, it was absolutely phenomenal meeting some of those guys. And I do think that Germany's got a lot to look forward to when they host the Euros next season.
Well, all pressure's on them, from their last two World Cup blunders. They gotta get back on track, have some more, you know, what's the word am I looking for? More better moments, I should say. But yeah, as for the
Just more
US,
spark,
as for the US, I'm just hearing stuff, stirring around about, missing Tyler Adams and all that too. So that's
yeah,
got to be eventually addressed too. Because
yeah.
if we're
No, that's
gonna
a
also
huge thing.
gonna, yeah,
They're not good without him. I mean, it's kind of
no,
the same with Leeds last year. Leeds weren't the same team when Tyler Adams did not play, and he is, I think, one of the most slept on players in the entire world because he's phenomenal. I mean, he's a leader. He's the USA's captain for a reason. He's one of the dominating voices in the locker room. He's very composed in what he does, and he's a phenomenal defensive midfielder. They didn't have that organization without him. Musa looked okay in the game. He had some moments, but they were lacking that defensive midfield presence without Adams. And it's kind of the same with Canada and Stefan Eustáquio. They're not the same team without him either. So I think there's a lot of concern with the U.S., kind of similar to Man City with Rodri, where I
hmm
think it kind of amplifies how important the CDM can be, and especially for the USA, and having Tyler Adams just makes their team that much better.
yeah. I mean, you hit the point. I was gonna try and address that, but getting back to what I was gonna say too. This all needs to be addressed too. With like the lack of depth, especially going into the 2024 Copa America, because that's gonna be a big watch for where
For
the
sure.
U.S. team wants to be for it in 2026 when they're going to be co-hosting the World Cup. Because when that comes around, all eyes are going to be on that team, especially for the sport trying to be growing in this country too. It's a big deal. So this could have a full-on ripple effect if it's not addressed. Obviously with the whole controversy around Berhalter and now it's either you either fail big time or it can be tweaked. And if they have an amazing Copa America run, or even in the World Cup, it's all up from there. Again,
Yeah, and I can say the
big,
same.
big.
Yeah, and I mean I can say the same for Canada in a lot of those things because Canada also is lacking midfield depth, and Eustáquio is just a way above the rest of them. And when we don't play with him, we're just that much worse. I mean, we had basically outside of him our whole lineup against Japan. Now, Japan's really good. I mean, I'm not going to discredit them at all. they've been phenomenal since the World Cup. They destroyed Germany 4-1 again, and then they destroyed us 4-1. I think it's kind of the same thing. Canada's also a country where soccer is growing, and a lot of the similarities are with the U.S. in that regard. They don't have a ton of depth. I mean, the USA and Canada both don't have a ton of depth, and that's a problem. I mean, both countries have good athletes. I mean, look at hockey for Canada. I mean, there's some phenomenal talent there. And it's not a short of athleticism. I think it's just they got to get both countries got to get more kids playing the game and upping their training. And I think the likes of Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David, and then in the U.S., Christian Pulisic, Weston McKennie, Gio Reyna, those guys I think will generate a lot of interest. But there's got to be some added depth, and I think I do think the only way is up though for both countries when it comes to their national teams.
Well, yeah, go big or go home. Because again, all eyes will be watching 2026.
Absolutely. Moving on from CONCACAF to a game that happened today. It is this episode is being recorded Tuesday. England played Italy in one of the most anticipated Euro qualifiers of the entire qualification round. England dominated the game. They got scored on early. A goal from West Ham reject Gianluca Scamacca. He did score an early one, but then Jude Bellingham wins a penalty. I thought it was a pen. He touched the ball before Di Lorenzo could get a tackle in. He got the tackle in, just happened to be on Bellingham. Clear-cut pen every day of the week. It was a yellow card offense, which I think the ref got right as well. Harry Kane scores. Second half commences. Marcus Rashford is an absolute bulleting run down the left. Bellingham finds him after winning the tackle in his own half. I mean, he covered the whole field in that play. And we'll talk about Jude in a second, but Marcus Rashford scores another great goal. Kane's put through. He scores. Game ends 3-1. England are going to the Euros. They qualified with a bunch of other teams, including Austria, France, and Germany. Obviously, Germany qualified because of the host, but overall, a lot of positive takeaways for England. They played phenomenal. If they play like this in the Euros, they'll be one of the favorites.
Yeah, no, they seem pretty good on track. I don't really know what else to add because you hit all the points on them. I guess we can just make Italy as they are still lacking in a lot of ways. If they don't, you can see them, having to do the hard way, trying to qualify for yet another tournament.
Yeah,
Really, just they're still lacking. All I can
yeah,
say, really.
for sure. And I think Italy's got a greater problem right now because, moving into our next topic, they've got some betting issues. Their player
Yeah.
Fagioli was just banned 7 months by FIFA for gambling problems, and then two Premier League players, which are Nicolo Zaniolo and Sandro Tonali. Tonali, I think, being the biggest of the bunch, have also been potentially indicted on these charges. So we could be potentially seeing bans for them as well in the coming weeks, which is really unfortunate for the likes of especially Newcastle, because Tonali is one of their key men. I think they'll be able to cover in the short term, but it still hurts them long term.
Hmm.
And Zaniolo's agent has come out saying that not Zaniolo, Tonali's agent has come out saying that he does have a gambling issue. And that just is a bad look for the game. Obviously, I've done my fair share of sports bets in the past few weeks. Obviously be safe about it, but you got to be careful with these things. And if you're a professional athlete, you can't bet. It's that simple. You can't do it. You got to wait till you're
No,
retired.
look at Ivan Toney.
Yeah. I mean, he's got to be feeling like $1,000,000 right now because he's just like, hey, guys, it's not just me. They have problems too.
Oh, please. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of other players who have not been uncovered yet have this issue too.
Oh, there's
Trust
going to
me.
be loads. I think there's going to be tons, especially with how big sports betting is getting. It's
No
coming, it's
kidding.
getting bigger in the United States, but it's already kind of pretty established in Europe with the likes of
Oh,
Bet
yeah, for sure.
365 in the UK.
Paddy Power,
Yeah, there's loads of platforms over there where you can do it, and it is
Betway,
unfortunate. I'm kind of
B-Win.
divided on the opinion of sports betting because on one hand, I think if you bet other leagues or other games, I don't think it matters that much, but it's when
Yeah,
you bet in your own league or your own team that's where it gets a bit shady because it
it's
it
kind of
kind
like
of
insider
compromises
trading.
integrity. So
Yeah, it's kind of like insider trading in a way. It's like you have like
Yeah,
some kind of knowledge of like your own team or
pretty
whatnot.
much.
Well, then again, it's kind of like you're betting on yourself, so it's not like you know for sure the outcome, but like it's like if you're very confident that you're gonna have a great performance and then you bet a lot of money down and then like you do bag, it's just
Yeah,
it is kind
it's
of messed up.
it's a very gray area. And it kind of reminds me of for viewers who listen who follow baseball at all, Pete Rose was an absolute legend of baseball. But he bet against his own team, costing himself a spot in the Hall of Fame. This is kind of similar. I mean, it's
Hmm.
these guys are betting on the game, and it compromises a lot of the integrity. Um, so that's a problem, and uh, I think the Prem and the Italian FA and other organizations have to find a good way to combat this because yeah, a lot of players are going to potentially face some problems. Um, and yeah, I think that's really all I need to say about that. But yeah, we could be seeing a real issue on hand.
Yeah, say this then for all my fellow Italians. Mamma mia. All I can say.
Oh boy.
Mamma mia.
Yeah, that's the one way to look at it. But yeah, moving on from that, one thing that I did see recently is there was a leakage that believes that Lionel Messi is going to win the Ballon d'Or this year. And I think that kind of raises the question of who deserves the Ballon d'Or the most. I tend to try to remain pretty impartial with these things, but that being said, I think naturally a Man City player should win the Ballon d'Or. They won the treble. I get that Messi won the
Yeah.
World Cup. That's a big achievement.
Hmm.
Man City won the treble. That's a bigger achievement than the
Yeah.
World Cup, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Winning 3 trophies is way harder than winning the World Cup. It doesn't happen nearly as much. A World Cup, you're guaranteed every 4 years. The last treble that I can think of that really happened was Bayern Munich back in 2013, and then
I
before that
mean,
was
yeah, and then even
Barcelona.
in like yeah, and then even in England too, like there's only ever been another treble before that. And that was in
Just one,
1999 with Man
yeah,
United. Yeah.
just United. Um, I think a City player should win the Ballon d'Or. I would normally probably have said KDB, but he's been injured for the last few months, which I think kind of
Hmm.
takes him out of the conversation. So naturally, I think it should be Erling Haaland. I mean, he scored over 50 goals in all competitions. I don't know where they would have been without him. Take him out of the team. It's a very different look. And City was one of those teams that just frankly had trouble getting over the hurdle of winning the damn Champions League, and they finally did it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I think it should be a City player, and if any team won the treble, if it was Barcelona, if it was PSG, if PSG won the treble, I would say Messi or Mbappe, or Neymar, potentially.
Hmm.
But I think it kind of raises the question of who deserves the Ballon d'Or. In my opinion, it's Erling Haaland.
Yeah. I will have to agree with you as much as it hurts to say as a rival fan, but I do think Haaland is more deserving because, throughout the whole year, he has been more consistent. Sure, you can say, oh, Messi's won the World Cup and he had an incredible, incredible World Cup run. Yeah, he did. But let's take a look at what happened after the fact, too. He didn't really do much with PSG either. Like he didn't really accomplish all that much. I guess you can say, yeah, he won the league with them again, but like again,
It's
it's
Ligue 1.
yeah, exactly. My point being, the only thing that you can really say against Haaland is that like sure in some of the more bigger games he didn't really do much, but he still had some form of a presence, and that can't really take from the overall consistency he
Yeah,
had throughout the Premier League, that Champions League run, and then even overall in the end winning the FA Cup. Again, it is Man City's treble, but again, also you can make the argument too, like oh, it should be going down just like the personal achievements, like even the team accolades as well. So there's a lot that you can say to it, but overall, in my opinion, I would say Haaland has had the more consistent season compared to Messi. Because again, Messi already got all those honors too from winning the World Cup. Like, he
yeah.
was the best player and everything. He got all those man of the matches awards and whatnot. Like he already got his flowers for that. But then when you go back to Paris, he didn't really overall
Yeah,
go on like his usual runs when he did win the previous Ballon d'Ors. He just did not achieve all that much after the fact. So again, I would personally have to go with Highland here.
yeah, and I think that there's a very legit argument for it. I think it's going to come down to those two guys. Overall, who do I think is the better player? I think it's Messi, but obviously, I
Yeah.
mean, but at the same time, it's not about who's the better player. It's about who had the better season, who was the more important guy for their team. It's Holland. I mean,
Hmm.
Messi had Mbappe and Neymar at PSG. Like he was part of a trio that frankly should have achieved a lot more than they did.
Yep.
Um, Holland, he obviously had Kevin, he had Rodri, and I think Rodri could be in that conversation too. But um, yeah, he had some good players with him, but he didn't have that level of trio. Uh, and I think that because PSG underachieved, the League's Cup's cool, but I mean, dear God, it's the League's Cup. And frankly, let's look
Yeah.
at MLS for like Messi's been injured for most of MLS since he's come back. Miami's not making the playoffs. He didn't do that. They lost the US Open Cup, which he didn't play in, but like it's not been a great year outside of the World Cup for Messi. I mean, the League's Cup is the highlight, and it's a new tournament.
Hmm.
That wasn't easy to win. No, I mean you played some of the best teams in Mexico. He played some of the best teams in MLS, but it, Holland won the Champions League.
Hmm.
Holland won the FA Cup. Holland won the Premier League. All three of those competitions are way harder to win than the League's Cup, and arguably winning all three combined, the World Cup.
Yeah.
Um, and if I look at next season, I think if Jude Bellingham keeps doing what he's doing, I think he's going to win it next year.
Yeah. No, he's a good shout too. We can talk about Bellingham on a different time. But again, going back to those two guys, yeah, no, I will say Haaland has been more consistent. You did bring up the point of the Leagues Cup. I did kind of forget about that instance too. He did have a good, incredible run in the Leagues Cup, and that should also be accounted for too, now that I think about it. But again, you can't really take away from the fact that Miami didn't qualify. Like he only just joined them when they were like rock bottom. So he had an uphill battle to fight there. When it comes to the other cup against Cincinnati, well, obviously he didn't play in that game, so you can't really take that away from him either.
Oh, they lost to Houston in the Open Cup.
Oh, Cincinnati. Sorry, yeah, they
Yeah.
won the semifinal against Cincinnati, but then they lost to Houston. That's right. I got that mixed up. But again, nonetheless, he didn't play in that game, so you can't really take that from him.
Yeah, that's kind of to my point though. He didn't play in these games. He's been
Mhm.
injured for part of the season. I
Yeah.
think that should be taken into account how much he plays. Um, so that's just my 2 cents on it. But yeah, little Ballon d'Or conversation at the end there. I think Holland should win. Willie probably not. I just think the fan vote's going to be. I mean, obviously fans will decide the Ballon d'Or, but I think it is going to be Messi. Um, which I'm not going to be fuming. It's not like the thing in 2020 when Lewandowski was just that obvious, and then they canceled the ceremony.
Yeah.
I thought that was worse,
That was
but
outrageous.
and even 2021, I think should have been. I think is that could have been Lewandowski as well. But
Yep.
yeah, I mean, and Messi didn't have the most goals in a calendar year either. It was actually Ronaldo, and I mean, I get that half of them were in the Saudi league, but still, I mean, the
Hmm.
most goals this calendar year has been CR7. So, and Holland is second, so he's
Yep.
still in that race. But I think that can do it for this convo and this episode. I don't know from us this week. We talked a little bit about the Premier League. Obviously, did start the episode off a little depressing, of course, with the unfortunate loss in Belgium, and then also obviously the conflict happening in Ukraine, not Ukraine, Israel, Palestine.
Every-
Obviously, our condolences to all the people affected by both of those tragedies. We
Mhm.
talked about Eden Hazard retiring, and then went into a couple Prem games, some refereeing decisions involved in those. We went into a couple international matches, and then the Italian betting scandal, and of course, a little bit of a Ballon d'Or conversation. That'll do it from us this week. As always, I am Grayson Mortimer,
And I'm Evan McGuire.
and we will see you next time.